How did you raise 2.5 million? Because it's amazing result for people who want to start startup.
Raising money is not what determines our success. Raising money is investment and a validation in your approach, but for us, the success has always been, can you affect patients' lives?
From what you said, it means like money is not the biggest motivation for you.
You can't take it when you die.
What are you building? Tell our
Yeah,
viewers what are you building?
The simplest way to describe what we're building is Codex for health data. So for those who are familiar with Codex, Codex is basically like a coding agent, right, that can work autonomously to build software. We're doing basically the same thing, but for healthcare data. So how do you take raw healthcare data? It can be in different formats, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the specifics. But to take that data and to turn it into usable insights for any type of entity that works in healthcare. It could be a hospital system, it could be a life sciences company, it could be an insurance company or another health tech organization that's working with data that's specific to healthcare. How do you make it usable for some downstream system?
It's B2B business.
It is a B2B business, yes.
For example, I'm the hospital and I want to use your product. Can you describe how it can be useful for my hospital?
I don't believe your audience, most of them are familiar with healthcare, so I'm going to keep this kind of like high level. Within healthcare, and you said your hospital, the providers have a system that's called an EMR, electronic medical record system. This is usually at the heart of their kind of all their operations. The EMRs are old, they're antiquated software systems, and they're primarily built for billing. So how do I, as the hospital, when I provide a service, turn that into a set of receipts, basically, or invoices for me to collect payment on? They're not built for this like new age of AI, right? And if you think about how a hospital operates, many of the tasks that are administrative or workflow related can be automated with AI systems. And this is where there's this big disconnect right now in healthcare. There's a tremendous amount of potential for what AI can do in transforming a hospital system, but they're tied down with these antiquated and old EMR systems. And this is where we come in. So we basically integrate with and pull data from these antiquated systems, and then we allow the hospital system to build and generate workflows or automated tasks that could be performed by agents to augment productivity or to replace tasks that a human would have to do and free them up to do something more valuable, like seeing a patient or following up on certain care plans. That's the goal, and that's kind of a high level of how it would be relevant for a hospital system.
What hardest moment so far you had while building this product?
Hardest moment? It's all hard. It's all hard.
All hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's never easy. It's funny. It's just like, it's a series of new problems that test you and challenge you in ways that you might not have foreseen. So, every stage has had something hard about it. So I think in the very beginning, we made the classic mistake where we tried to solve too many problems, right? We had this big technical vision for what we could do and what we could accomplish, and we started building a product that was just way too wide. And so there was basically it wasn't really a pivot, it was more of like a reduction and fine tuning of what we're building. And that process was really painful because we had to make some decisions about, some core directions around the technical vision for the company. Fundraising was challenging, right? We started our fundraise in December, which I would advise no one to do, right? Typically, all the checks are written at the end of before the end of the year, and all the VCs are probably skiing in the Alps or somewhere out west, and they're not picking up phone calls. Finding the right teammates, right? Hiring is really challenging, but not because there's a lack of people. It's about finding the right fit, right? Right person, especially in the beginning of an organization where, every hiring decision is essentially going to massively affect the culture. And you're looking for very specific type of players who can play different roles. So it's just been a successive series of hard problems to solve, but it's incredibly fulfilling. And it's like, once you get used to that hard, it's like, it becomes addicting a bit because you look for it then. Yeah.
Who is Pi? Can you give us a few sentences? Who is Pi?
That's a very open-ended question.
Entrepreneur for sure.
Yeah, well, I think problem solver, challenge seeker, curious mind. Yeah, I think that sums it up. That's like, I think that crosses across all these other like, because it's not just business, right? It's like intellectual pursuits or physical pursuits. I think I bring those three things to any of the areas I operate.
What people misunderstand about your success? What do you think? Because usually, narrative in internet, like if you start startup, you raise money and you can chill retire basically after you raise money, right? What people misunderstand about that?
Well, I would push back against that. Raising money is not what determines our success, right? Raising money it's a investment and a validation in your approach, but for us, the success has always been, can you affect patients' lives, right? So to date, we've processed just over 7.8 million patient records. Our database now, I was just looking at the numbers, we've processed over 10 million different images, right? So think like CAT scans, x-rays, radiology reports. Each of those images, or rather each of those patients, like we've affected their lives in some way, which is incredibly gratifying. And that's like, I think first and foremost, our litmus test for success. The fundraise is incredibly validating, and it gives us tools to further that mission. And that's where, the work's not done yet, right? If everything goes to plan, we'll probably raise our next round in the next 12 months. We'll expand the team, we'll expand the product, and we'll just continue to build on that success. But for me, it's about how we get to a point where we're like radically changing the healthcare environment, which is ultimately why I got into this business, right? My last startup was not in healthcare. It was in, a hard tech space. The two previous startups I worked for as a founding engineer, or like a, principal investigator, was also in the hard tech space. It wasn't necessarily healthcare related, but healthcare is unique. It's incredibly gratifying. If you're doing the right work, you're actually affecting people's lives positively. Just super motivating for me. It's like, it gets me excited to get up out of the bed every day and just go to work and try to solve something really hard that's going to affect millions of people.
From what you said, it means like money is not the biggest motivation for you.
Not at all, no.
Because in hard moments, money will not motivate when you need to still not give up and push through the pain.
You can't take it when you die. What's the point? Don't get me wrong, like money is incredibly important. We live in a capitalist society. You need money to live. You want to have food on the table, a roof over your head. You want to have, nice things, and money gets you access to certain things. So up to a certain point, it's absolutely required. I think the same thing goes for business, right? There are certain things that you need capital for. You need to invest, and this is where the VC game here is incredible, right? In the US, it's unlike any other market. So if you want to be a builder, it's probably the best place to be in the world at any point in time. But that's not the end game, right? This is the way I viewed it. Like, I don't want to build a unicorn. I want to build something that actually solves real challenging problems. And I think those things will come as a downstream effect of having those goals and actually building something useful.
From corporate life, you had successful experience in work for AWS, right?
Yes. Yeah.
For Amazon. And that decision to leave your work and start something totally new from scratch, how it was not easy or it was easy decision?
Yeah, so I left AWS. I actually went to Stripe, which was a fintech company. I was there for about 14 months, and I actually went to get my MBA because I thought I was going to be at Stripe for a long time. It turned out that was not the case. I still finished my MBA at Kellogg, which completely opened my eyes to the possibilities of what I could do. But it wasn't a straight road. I think in hindsight, you look at it and you're like, oh, it's a fairly straightforward path. But when you're on the path and you're looking forward, you have a million different branches you could have taken. So I think there's a survivor fallacy or survivor bias that, at least whenever I hear founders talk about their story, they make it seem like it was A to B to C to D and it was inevitable and I was on this path and I have a hard time believing that when I hear anybody talk about it, be it Bezos or Zuck or some of these earlier stage companies that are coming up now. I think that's part of the marketing material. They have to talk about it that way because it, portrays an image, again, of inevitability that they want the market to have.
Storytelling.
Yeah, it's storytelling. Yeah. I didn't feel that way at any point. It was always a risk, right? As it should be, right? If it was not risky, I think a lot more people would be going and starting companies, right? We had a lot of questions, a lot of unanswered questions, which, again, I think for like the typical person that goes to business school, you kind of want to have all the answers and then you make a decision. It's really uncomfortable to make decisions with, impartial or partial information. So I took a gamble, and I have a very supportive wife, and she was like, if not now, then when? Like, go take your big swing. And so we took the plunge, and it was a lot of hard work, but now in hindsight, it's like, oh, I see how I connect the dots. But when you're living it, it's not that obvious. So
The second person who says that, like in the front, you can connect the dots, like Steve Jobs said.
Yeah.
But when you look back,
Right.
you understand why and what you did
100%,
right.
yeah. The path appears after you've walked it, right? So like only when you're looking back do you see like, oh, it's very clear. That was the way up the mountain.
What scared you most when you quit your job?
Paycheck, insurance, the basic things. I grew up, I'm first generation. My parents worked incredibly hard, but
You born and raised in US.
born and raised here, yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago suburbs. We never wanted for anything, but there was no like financial security net for me ever. So I always had this mentality where like, you got to work, you got to earn bread, and if you don't, there's no one there to catch you. That's the mentality I had, and I think that's incredibly motivating because you're like, I got to work hard because no one's coming to save me. I got to save myself, and that's fuel. I had that mentality probably far longer than was really reflected in my reality. And when I left Stripe, that was like the biggest thing that I was thinking about. I was like, holy crap, I got nothing, right? I'm falling. And then you look at the bank account and you're like, okay, I've done well for the last 10, 15 years. I've saved up. I have a cushion. I actually have time and space. And it was like, it took me like a week to just not have that stress, that anxiety of like, oh no, I got to get back to getting a paycheck. And it's like, no, this is actually what you need. You need some time and space. That was a total, it screwed my mind for a little bit. And so getting over that was probably the first hurdle to starting the business.
Thank you for this honest opinion and honest feelings. Because a lot of, you can hear like people quit your job, start a business, it's so easy. And I even have my group, and I always said, like, I totally understand why it's not easy. When I started the business, I live in my parents' apartment, slept on the couch, I didn't spend any money. I have like, I don't know if I could do it now, if I have kids, wife, mortgage. It's not that easy how people say that, oh, just do it, right? And not everyone is honest about that. Most people say, start, it's no problem, just now or never, and it's not easy.
It's not easy. I think everyone needs to find their own source of motivation. I was, I dislike that I'm going to quote him, but I think Alex Karp talked about this, the Palantir founder. And he's like, there are positive ways to motivate yourself, right? Like, hey, we want to change the world for the better. We want to make patients' lives better, right? You need like the light side, but sometimes the dark side helps as well. Like, are you out to, prove somebody wrong? Like someone didn't believe in you and you got that chip on your shoulder and you want to go say, hey, remember when you didn't believe in Roman? Like, I'm going to show you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's incredibly motivating.
Yeah, it's great motivation.
You could be competitive, right? Like, you kind of got to find these dark side motivators as well.
I think it's even more motivating than
it
life.
It is. I mean, have you seen the Last Dance documentary, the Michael Jordan?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the best.
I mean, that was the number one way he would win the games. Is like someone would be like, "Oh, Jordan, you're not what you used to be," and he's like, "That's all I needed. I took that personally."
It's very motivated.
Correct.
Show,
yeah. So I think finding that that right balance, and the reason why I bring that up is, you were talking about like, hey, you have kids, you got a mortgage. I think sometimes, when you burn the boats, when you have no other choice, that's the only time you're going to get 100% out of yourself. Yeah. I read a ton of startup-related books about the founder journey as, it's like required reading, just the amount of lessons there are immense. A lot of startups or they used to be startups, now they're, Fortune 500 companies, they talk about how like the founder put it all on the line and they're like, we're burning the boat, we're putting all of our capital, everything in the company is going in on this bet. If this doesn't work, the company's shot. And I think that's, it's definitely strategic, right? They go and think through like, okay, what's going to be the sustainable business model? What's the product? What's the future? Blah, blah, blah. But it's also like, I think it's a signal to the company. You're like, hey guys, this is it. If this doesn't work, if we don't find a way to make this work, we're done. Guess what? Everyone's going to work 1,000 times harder because they're now like, this is the only way.
I think CEO of NVIDIA, his strategy, we have money for 1 month. Even a $4 trillion company now, but they still live that way. We have enough capital for 1 month and we have to work hard to survive. Because so many companies didn't do that.
Correct, yeah.
Nokia, Skype and other companies who failed.
100%, and it's I don't think it's logical at all, right? But it's one of these things where it's like, we're humans, and for humans to get the best out of a human-driven organization, you need to have externalities and internalities of motivation, and so this is one of them. I think it's a very powerful one.
What did corporate life prepare you for, or didn't prepare for anything?
Oh, it prepared me for so much, yeah. I think similar to the Kellogg experience, like the network, right? Just the people you get to know and the people who become part of your Rolodex that you can call upon to ask questions and get advice and get introductions. It's immensely powerful. I was lucky enough to come up through, Amazon when AWS was just getting built. Like I remember going to customers, because who expects a book-selling business to start a cloud company, right? Start the cloud, right? I think AWS was the first to do it. I remember showing up to customers and they're like, what is a bookseller doing here? Like we're an IT department. We're not here to buy books. So it's like learning how to educate, how to evangelize something new, how to work with incredibly smart people who are trained to do things one way and get them to, do durable, behavior changes. I got to learn a lot about technology. I got to travel and see the world. I loved my time in, again, I was a consultant at Accenture, and then I went to AWS, and then at Stripe. I got to just see and learn a ton, right? Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of challenges of working at those places, right? A lot of hard things as well, but those are all lessons, right? And so you learn, hey, I want to build a company this way, or I really did not like this idea or this method. I'm going to make sure to not repeat that. And those come up all the time. It's like, we're still quite small at Nimblemind. We got a team of like just over 10 people, but there's so many things that I learned from that past corporate life that I've brought in as far as like mechanisms or ways of working for the team.
It's you bring from corporation. What do you think, who should never become entrepreneurs? Or everyone can be entrepreneur? It's like, someone always, like many people say, like anyone can be, but what I think it's not. It's the same like you can play on piano and be professional, or play baseball or soccer. Not everyone has talent or ability to do that.
I think everyone has the potential to be an entrepreneur, right? I think you need to have the right idea. You need to be at the right point in your life where you're willing to take a risk. You need to be sufficiently motivated. I think if all those things align, I think, potentially anyone is capable of being an entrepreneur. I feel like this is maybe the way the, economy is headed. Like in 100 years, I think everyone's work might look more entrepreneurship-like than working for big companies. Like everything's getting commoditized. AI, I think, is going to radically change how people work. And so there's going to be, I think, a reduction in the size of companies and what they do, and it'll be more self-guided, self-started. It'll take time for us to get to that point. I might be totally wrong, but I think everyone's capable of it. It's just, are you at the right point in your life, and are those, stars aligning? Yeah.
What is the biggest lie about entrepreneurship? Why your opinion is important? Because you started after corporate life.
There's like a whole cottage industry, I think, of people who talk about it, and I despise it. As someone who, my Instagram is just, it's all filled with like people talking about entrepreneurship. I don't think there's any like universalities of the process. You know, I've only founded 2. I've worked at another 2, not as a founder. I think like there's always exceptions to every rule. There's truisms that, you know, work in certain situations and maybe don't in others. My feeling is like timing is a big part of it, and it's a lot of luck.
Luck.
Yeah, and obviously your job is, you know, as a human, I think, not just as an entrepreneur, is to optimize and maximize your luck, right? You work hard, I can't remember where I heard this from, but it's basically you increase your surface area for luck to hit you, right? So like you put yourself in certain positions, you go speak, you go network, right? And you just increase the chances that you'll get lucky. But there's that luck element to it. Like there's certain businesses where if you started too early, it would fail. If you started too late, obviously someone else is going to take the idea. Like there's a window for certain things, and like
Luck present for sure.
yeah. So you have to, I think, be comfortable with that, you know, luck element of the process. But I don't know if there's any like big lies. You certainly don't need VC funding. Like if you can bootstrap and build a business and make it cash flow positive and reinvest that, like that's one way to build a business. You don't need to get investors. I'm struggling to think of any big lies I've heard.
Okay, then question. Yeah, probably you'll remember where we got this question. Revenue or profit?
I think it depends on early stage or late stage. Early stage, I would say like Runway is actually what you need. That's the main thing to keep an eye on. And I'm talking about like pre-seed, seed stage. Your default mode should be to try to stay alive as long as possible until you figure something out, until you figure out what's going to be that takeoff product that's going to get you like insane growth. So, you know, Runway is a combination of dollars in minus what you're burning, right? So I think it kind of captures both that revenue and profit thing into one core metric. I think once you get to like later stage, I think it shifts more towards revenue, but you got to be getting to profitability, right? You can't be burning money forever, right? So
He gave us example like Amazon, Tesla, and other successful companies who burn a lot of cash, but they get profitable much later.
yeah, but like Amazon was, I think, always very near profitability. It's just that whatever profit they made, they plowed it back into the business to expand, right? So it was basically this business where the larger they got, the better economies of scale they had, and the more their moat got built against all these competitors, right? Like it's an infrastructure play, right? To build fulfillment centers around the world. Each of those facilities are, you know, they used to be $100+ million. Now it's like in the tens of millions of dollars. Although I don't know, maybe the numbers have changed with the amount of automation now and the robotics that goes into it. But they're like, we know we can turn on the profitability, but let's reinvest in the business because we can still capture the market. So again, I think it's like more revenue focused, but again, you need to demonstrate that the core business is functioning, right? Like, are you investing into this revenue generating operation that can be profitable at a certain point once you decide that that's like the decision that you want to make? Obviously, like I think the core, like the best business that I know of right now is like Google. Like we'd all like to be Google's business, right? It's like their ad business is like 85-90% margin business. Like they've been making money since like year 3. There's not many businesses like that, right? So you need to invest to get it to a certain point. And, you know, I think Runway for early stage and then revenue for late stage.
Okay, you have an idea, and what's the first move? We will talk about people who watch us.
Yeah, you got to talk about it. You got to talk about it. I think I see a lot of people struggle with this. So we went through Techstars, which is like one of the incubators. It's like, you know, there's a ton of them out there, but Techstars I think is the biggest one other than YC. So I mentor. I've been invited back to like speak to different startup groups. And then people reach out to me and they're like, they ask for advice. And the number one thing that irks me, and this is like the first mistake you could make, is people don't talk about their idea. Like they think they have a brilliant product, service, whatever it is. And it's like, okay, cool. Tell me about it. And they're like, we got to sign an NDA or I'm not going to tell you the details. It's like, if you think that your idea is so good and it's so easily replicated by you just telling me, then that's not really going to be a business, because someone could just, the second you go public or you come out of stealth mode, someone's going to take what you've built and build it, and you're going to have 1,000 different competitors. That's like the first thing that I think founders need to get over is like, if you have an idea, you got to go pressure test it. Go tell as many people as you can and get feedback, get reactions, invite criticism, and be comfortable with that. It's not, you shouldn't take it as they're criticizing you. Take it as like they're giving you valuable feedback about the actual idea and the service that you're trying to build. And do that with as many people as you can. Like, before we built anything at Nimblemind, we talked to 200 plus institutions. 200. And we built mock-ups. We had something to show, and we're like, this is the product.
Like kind of MVP.
Yeah, but it was not functional. It was just like a wireframe. But it's like, hey, now there's something that the user, potential user, or the buyer can see and be like, oh, actually, this feature is really interesting. What does that do? I don't care about the rest. And it's like, cool, okay, you don't care about the marketplace. We had a marketplace feature for Nimblemind early on. And they're like, no, I'm interested in this other piece. What does that do? And it's like, cool, well, we think it does 1, 2, 3 things. And they're like, oh, I was really hoping it did this other thing. We're like, cool, okay, we'll go mock that up and we'll go get more feedback. You got to talk about it. You got to evangelize it. And this is like, I think maybe just building on that idea is like, every founder needs to be a seller. You're always selling. You're either selling
to
your
investors,
vision, you're selling to investors, you're selling to customers, or you're selling to employees, right? How are you going to attract an early stage employee when you can't pay them the salary of like a big tech company that maybe they have the option to go to? You can't offer them the security of any other company because like, hey, the company's been around for 100 years and it's probably going to be around for another 10 or 20 or 30 at least. Like, you're a risky bet as a founder. So you need to be incredibly effective at selling your idea, selling your vision, and you are constantly demonstrating and signaling that you are worth backing. And everyone's going to make a choice every day to be like, hey, I'm going to follow Roman into the trenches because I believe in him and his vision. Like, you got to get really good at that. And it doesn't come easy, and it's not a natural thing that most people have, but the only way you get better is practice. And so all these reps, right? You go talk to 200 plus people, guess what? You'll get pretty darn good at selling that idea, and you find the right talk track and you find the right way to communicate it, and your body language changes, and like, you learn like to pick up signals, and like you just learn how to work that particular problem with that particular client base. And that's part of the process that most people don't even acknowledge and get to and realize that it's a very useful journey to go through.
That's why I think people who don't want to share, they don't understand the idea doesn't mean anything, because action is most important, right? Yes. You can have 100 ideas, but to imply that in life and make something work, it's so much energy, so much time, and it's not that easy how people think. Yeah. What skills make people to go break on the walls and go to move forward? Sales, important.
Yeah. I wouldn't qualify this as a skill, but I've noticed this with every single founder that I've talked to. You need some level of risk tolerance. And I mentioned this earlier, like, I think this is a generality, but I think the more intelligent a human being is, the more they have foresight, the more they have abilities to see, hey, if I do this, then that happens, right? Which is great in most settings, but I think it works to your detriment in certain settings, founders being one of them. Right? If you're starting a company, there's a million reasons to not do it. And what I've seen is like incredibly intelligent people who probably have a better chance at making something successful compared to their other peers, see all the downsides, see all the risks, and then they don't do it. They talk themselves out of it, right? So I don't think it's so much a skill as it is a internal maturity, being comfortable with like the mystery of not knowing, of unknown variables, and not knowing exactly what's going to happen, and being comfortable with that. And so like a level of risk taking is absolutely necessary. I think that is more or less a skill because you could practice it, right? I used to be totally against gambling, and I still don't gamble except on occasion. But like taking calculated bets, obviously when you're not like breaking the bank, but just like understanding what your tolerance is and how you quantify risk, and practicing that is super useful. Because I believe this is most executives. Like you're always taking calculated risks, right? You try to get as much information as you can. You understand the market you're operating in. You're making an investment in a certain team or a product or a service. You're going to test it. Like there's upsides and there's downsides, right? You're always trying to optimize what that balance is. And so that's like a skill that I think people absolutely need to.
We will talk now about Kellogg a little bit. And my wife said, what Kellogg did with you? Like, what do you mean? She said, you was more like risky before. I said, I figured out with me as well. Like,
so it made you less risky?
Less risky. Because I overthink a lot. Like, when they teach you in finance class how to do NPV and other stuff, before I invest like 150,000 to buy a new truck, for example, and I didn't count, it will be NPV will be positive or negative, right? I just, okay, this will work, let's go, right? And now I like, okay, let's think about this, what is going on in economy, what's going on in environment, and I overthinking too much.
Yeah. So have you missed bets that you should have taken?
I didn't miss, I don't know if I missed or not, but I think I missed opportunity after I graduated, I think I missed some time, because it was very tough period for my business. Sure. But I still think I could do some moves, and I overthink. Because I got too much knowledge, and like we have in classes, leadership, right? When they teach you, like you don't make decision if you don't have 90% of data. Yeah. And most of information very useful. Like, yes, it's true, I always now try to teach my team, if you don't have data, don't make decision. Collect the data, and based on the data, make decision. Don't think I know without facts. And all this help. But in other side, what you say, like some people, I understand when people cannot start business or they don't take a risk, because even from my school, from university, very smart people, right? But in life, they're scared to take risk. And this opportunity, when you have opportunity in business and you have to move fast, you can't sometimes overthink. You need to do based on your experience. Okay, I think it's a good move, let's go. Yeah. It was one of the, which my wife told me, I said, okay, I paid too much for this school, like over 200,000, and you tell me like school affect me in worse ways than in better way, right? Then Kellogg, why Kellogg? Why decide you need MBA?
I have an engineering background, so I did my undergrad and graduate work in nuclear engineering of all things.
Oh, wow.
I didn't learn any accounting,
you have
any
very
finance.
common with Professor Chernov.
Yeah, we actually talked about that, yeah. What did he say? He's like, you had two options. You could be a mathematician or a physicist. Yeah, I think those were.
He's also nuclear from Bulgaria. He graduated.
Yeah. I enjoyed the technical and like inventive side of what I did in engineering. I then went into the tech side, and I was at AWS, and I'm like, okay, I see, the first-class citizens at a tech company, in my opinion, are the product leaders, right? The people who are building the product, shaping the vision, they're talking to customers, they're bringing everything together, and they're actually the ones that are like driving the business forward at these companies. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. So how do I get to that point? I had the technical background and like the acumen. I didn't have the, finance, accounting, HR, leadership, communication, education to back up kind of that place that I wanted to go in my life. There's a ton that I learned at AWS and at Stripe. But I'm like, okay, I have the tools in the toolbox, but I don't have like the fundamental, high theory to kind of put the picture together. And so I was like, okay, now's the right time to go get my MBA. And then I was in Chicago, and so I think I started the application at University of Chicago and Kellogg. And then I went to event mixers for both, and just the crowd at Kellogg I was like, these are my people. It was just super warm. Everyone was very social, obviously highly intelligent. It just felt right. And I'm like, I'm gonna make a commitment. I got an offer, and so the rest is history.
What surprised you most in this program?
I thought we were going to be in the Kellogg Global Hub.
Same.
I'm like, wait,
where is our...
I see this nice,
you
beautiful
in that
building. Wait, we're across the street? Yeah.
I didn't know we need to stay on the campus for 2 days. And I came from the Miami launch week and I told my wife, like, you know what, I need to stay from Friday to Sunday. She said, what? Yeah, I didn't know that.
That's
That
fun.
was
I like
surprise
it.
you.
Well,
Campus is surprise.
Yeah. I was surprised with, I don't think there was many tech people in my cohort, which surprised me. I thought there would be more. I think we maybe had like 10 to 15 people, probably less. I thought there'd be more tech representation, but it was nice. We got a full, like, very diverse set of industries represented, which was also, you know, informative and educational, but I thought there'd be more people in tech.
Do you think Kellogg helped you to change the path and be an entrepreneurship?
Yeah, undoubtedly. For sure, yeah. It's knowledge. The knowledge is always helpful. I think the network is extremely helpful. That's probably been the biggest contributor.
And you think for people who want to start a business, it's a good way to try to go to Kellogg and get this knowledge? Or it's very individual?
As you know, the answer is it depends, right?
One of my favorite professors, Dean of...
Yeah, are you, you know, are you early 20s something and you have maybe just a couple years of work experience? Can you afford to go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? I think it depends on the person and where they're at. It also depends on their skills, like what's their background, what do they have? So for some it might work, others it might not. I don't know if I'm comfortable giving like a generality that, you know, everyone needs to go there. For me it was absolutely the right choice.
And most valuable thing from Kellogg?
I always answered this a different way. For me, the network, right? That's the most valuable thing for me. Is these are friends, but they're also like trusted professionals who are very competent and well connected that, you know, you can call upon and get advice and guidance from. I was talking to the husband of a cohort mate, and he kind of saw us at the beginning of the program, and then after the program ended, we were at, you know, they were hosting like a little barbecue, and a bunch of the Kellogg folks were there, and we kind of had the same conversation about what, you know, Kellogg gave to us, and he answered it for us, and he's like, without a doubt, it's the confidence. You guys have all become more confident versions of yourself. And it was an interesting answer to the question, because, you know, you're changing and growing every day. It's hard to see how maybe 2 years or, you know, folks are doing 1 year or whatever their program happens to be. It's hard to notice that growth in yourself, but is an interesting perspective to get an outsider, and they're like, hey, I saw you at the beginning of this, and then I saw you know, the group of people at the end, and you're all just like, you're more confident embodying who you are, just being authentic and showing up and, you know, making sure you're heard. And I thought that was a brilliant answer, because now that I think about it, I think a lot of people in my cohort became better versions of themselves, which is, I think, is what you hope to get from an education, right? Just self-actualize in a meaningful way.
What's the next chapter for you?
I'm in this chapter. I don't know. I don't know what comes
This
next.
just only started. This chapter only is beginning.
It depends on what you mean by chapter. So I'm all in on Nimblemind, right? I burned the boats. I got no other options. I want to make this work, which was, again, intentional. Like, there is no escape pod. Obviously there are. You know, I trust that I can figure out what comes next when that time comes. But right now I'm fully focused on Nimblemind. We've got a great team. We actually just signed our largest customer to date last week. Thank you. We have an interesting new use case that we're addressing for the first time in oncology, which is really exciting. So that's like a space that we've been wanting to get to. The team's growing. We have like just a ton of smart people that, you know, they're taking a risk to work with us.
Can we talk a little bit, like, short answer for people who would like to start startup? And for example, how do you know it's time to start startup? Like you said a little bit, like you have idea and you try to test idea. MVP, show people, right?
Yeah.
This will be a beginning.
Yeah, I think you got to validate, and sometimes the clearest validation is that someone else is doing it. So is there a company that just started that's doing kind of a similar thing?
But it's a good idea to build like blue ocean, or you can still compete with someone if you can offer something better than products on the market.
Yeah, I think both are true. Both have their own challenges. But I used to view competitors as like a total negative signal. Like, oh man, someone's doing something very similar to us. That's not good. Actually, for early stage, I think that's actually good. It's like, hey, that means there's a clear demand. There's a clear buyer. There's investors who understand the play. You can figure out a different approach and figure out some differentiators, but I think that's a positive. It validates that idea is useful and works. So like, flip your mindset around competitors and see that as a validation of your approach to the market.
How do you test idea fast?
Oh my God, it's never been easier, in my opinion. Like I remember 10 years ago, working at one of the other startups that I was at. It would take you like 4 or 5 months to build a very rudimentary MVP. Now it's like there's any number of Gen AI programs that you just can vibe code up. We had this, sorry, I know you asked for short answers, but we had an interview
No problem.
last week. Someone showed up to the call. They had signed up to be a beta user. They had created an account with Nimblemind. We have a product called Nimble Labs. They'd signed up for that. And he used it. He used the product, our product, that's live with customers, before the interview. And he shows up to the interview. We basically talked for 20 minutes, and he's like, hey, I created a new version of the UI. I want to show you. He vibe coded a new version of our platform with a bunch of features that we're working on and we're going to release, but I think he worked on it for less than like 4 hours.
To have co-founder is important, or you can be by yourself? And do you have co-founder?
I have a co-founder. I'm very grateful to have found my co-founder. I dated over 110 other co-founders before I found Naveen. We work incredibly well together. I think there's a trust and a complementary skill set that really makes life easier. Like, things are hard as a founder. When you have someone that you can rely on to cover your back and do other things, I think it's immensely helpful. I can't imagine doing a startup without a co-founder. I know plenty of solo co-founders though, and they're doing great. But for me, it's just nice to be able to call someone and be like, hey, what do we do here?
Even more in tough time.
Yeah.
Build first or sell first? Or both?
Sell first.
Sell first.
Like the idea, right? At the genesis of the company, yeah, sell. You got to sell the idea.
What should an MVP reel be? Like MVP, it's like you said, it's not supposed to be functional, right? You just interface to show something, right? It will be enough to test the product.
I mean, we did phase 0, right?
Yeah. Did you use something from that phase 0, like some kind of features?
I feel like there are some really good nuggets that the professor had actually shared with us when we did our launch in Miami. And so yes, we had brought some of those to Nimblemind at its genesis.
What do you think in general about phase 0? What was that experience?
We were in Dubai. I think there was some miscommunication or misunderstanding of like what was possible to do in that environment that was compliant with local laws. And so I think, to the point I made earlier, one of the most important things about the founder process is like to just communicate your idea and get feedback and learn the pain that the customer is going through and what's the job to be done, right? What are you trying to solve for? And so one of the exercises was going out and basically talking to as many people as you could I think it was to train the individual to, hey, get over that and just go communicate with people. But I think, I think it was COP, it was the climate conference that was going on. So I think there was like maybe a stricter environment around what was permissible for individuals to do and to go solicit these conversations. So unfortunately, that environment wasn't conducive to doing that exercise at that time. So I think that kind of took away from some of the lessons to be learned from that class. But other than that, I think it was largely positive.
I always tell people, like, because everyone was like, oh my God, and I said, like, if you came to this class to learn about entrepreneurship, this is like nothing, because you will take risk to build company tomorrow, and you'll take so much risk.
Yeah.
And if you're scared to go outside or if something happen, to build company will be super difficult. Because it was like not comfortable environment, right? It was so many issues. But I think it's helped to understand if you'll go by yourself tomorrow and take risk, because you have to take responsibility for yourself, for your family, for your employees. And a lot of stuff can happen every day. It depends on your business. Like I'm in business when can something happen super bad on the road, and I have to take responsibility for the employees and other stuff. If you're not ready for that, better than don't start. But it was an interesting challenge. But in London, they have more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people said in London, because we had Dubai and another class went to London, they said it was super fun. Do startups really need investors? Or if you, even in Dubai again, they said like if you can avoid venture funds, then better do that because it's expensive capital. What do you think?
So I'm going to take your question very literally. Do you need investors? Yes, always. Now the investors could be angels, they could be, friends and family, it could be a strategic partner, it could be yourself, right? I think you always need an investor, and you need to be the first investor, right? If you're the founder and you're not fully invested in your business, like if you haven't quit your job or if you haven't fully committed to the idea, and I see a lot of people kind of straddling, and it's not to say that it's impossible, but it's a bad signal, right? If you're trying to raise, like, hey, you're still working your other job, but you're telling me you're founding this company, like you're not even all in. Why should I write you a check? So you need to be the first investor. Your question around VCs or your point around VCs is absolutely true. VCs run the gamut, right? There's great VCs, there's terrible VCs. I've heard some horror stories about people who are absolutely awful to work with, where they're like, send me, all sorts of financial data all the time, and I'm in your business, and I want to know when you're making certain decisions and why, and I'm going to be involved in the management, which I think is negative largely. If you can find a good VC, then obviously that relationship looks very different. I feel very fortunate. We found a great set of investors.
Is a group of investors?
Yeah, so we had 4 institutional investors. We originally started out raising, our target was actually much lower than where we ended up at. And then we just started talking to a bunch of investors, and they were really interested in investing, and we were able to convert that into like a multi-party round. And that drove our valuation up. So we basically doubled our valuation from the start to the end of the investment process because there was so much demand. And then we ended up raising like 2.5x more than we had originally set out to raise. So we were oversubscribed is the term. But again, it's like we turn people away. There's a couple that I was just not interested in working with. I'd heard some horror stories from other founders working with a particular team, and I'm like, obviously very cordial and diplomatic, but like, hey, we're topped up for this round. Sorry, there's no more room for you. Or you give them a diplomatic answer.
And what you can recommend, how better to find investors? Networking?
Yeah, you got to network. I think the single best referral or intro or recommendation you can get is from another founder of a company that is in the portfolio of an investor that you're targeting. So go talk to other founders, talk to them about your idea, tell them about build a relationship with them, a real relationship. And then if they can give you a warm introduction to their investor, that's huge. Next best intros, I think, are from other VCs. That one's kind of hit or miss because the VCs, if they're not invested in you, then it's like, well, it's kind of that same problem I was talking about earlier, like you're not invested in them, why are you referring them to me? But it's still useful, right? It opens the door. Worst is if you're just cold emailing and reaching out to investors. That's typically not an effective way of getting people on the phone.
For me, interesting your opinion about skin in the game. For example, if you have co-founder, what is your opinion? What do you think? If you have co-founder and you said, I'll invest my resources, right? Money, most important resource, money and time, right? But money, I still think like it's skin in the game. And someone said, I'll invest my time. Do you believe in that strategy, or you think it has to be equal? And if I'm invest and we co-founders, we need to be at least close to be equal and take the same risk?
So just to be clear, co-founder does not mean equal equity, right? You could be a co-founder and one person can own 95% of the company, the other could own 5%.
But if someone said, I will not invest, but I want like even 10 or 15%, but you invest.
But what does time mean?
I will run the company, I'll be CEO or something. Or I will start, or I'll invest my time to both decided to start the company, and one said I will invest money, and second one said I will invest my time. I know how they will split equity, but one take risk financially, and another one said no.
So the financial investing party, are they also helping run the business?
Yes.
Or they're
Yeah,
just
they do
the
both.
money?
They both run.
Okay.
How important, because it's my favorite book, Skin on the Game. And I very believe in everything what you do in life. If you have skin on the game, it's more, you can take advice from this person, you can do something together when you have the same risk tolerance.
Again, it depends.
Depends.
It depends, because I've seen examples of when it's worked and when it's not worked. There's 3 founders that I know where they were incredibly smart, hardworking. These are some of the most incredible founders that I know in my network. Like a Stanford grad, one person out of MIT. They were the founder, but they didn't have the financial, ability to invest. And they co-founded with someone much more senior who had maybe done like multiple startups before, successfully exited. They had some cash. Obviously, again, they had the financial means, and they've seen like what the process and journey is like. And they've partnered together, and they're like co-CEOs. Mm-hmm. And so that junior founder is bringing energy and verve and tenacity to the relationship, and they're being guided by this more senior founder. Obviously, I don't know the equity details of the breakdown. I imagine the senior person's getting a lot more, but
this works.
It works, right? There's a clear succession plan. I think there has to be, clear agreements, clean agreements, as I can't remember what the book's called, but one of the most valuable exercises my co-founder and I did is we wrote each other's job descriptions, mm-hmm. and then we had several meetings about it. And this is part of our the founder dating process. Mm-hmm. So like, hey, I expect you to do X, Y, Z things, and I created a list, and he did the same for me. Well, okay. And then we met for like 45 minutes, and we're like, oh, I didn't expect you to, you think I should do that? I didn't even think about that, but that's good. Like, someone needs to do that. Okay, I'll take that on. Vice versa. And then we'll revisit this every once in a while. Like every quarter, we'll kind of go back to it. So that, I think, set us up. Everyone could do it a different way. This is what worked for us. It set us up for just very clean expectations of what each party is going to do and the level of responsibility to do those tasks. And then that should be reflected in the cap table. So that's kind of like the process that worked for us. But I think there's many ways of kind of skinning that cat.
What do investors care most about when they invest?
Depends on the investor. There's a lot of different types of investors. If it's an angel, then most likely they care about you and they're like, I believe in you. I know you have the tenacity, the spirit, the vision. You're going to figure it out, so I'm going to invest in you. If it's a early stage VC, right, it could be a number of different things. It could be, the space you're building in. It could be the idea. It could be the potential market. If it's later stage, then it's going to be like financials. I think largely drive that. Like, hey, what's the growth rate? What's the actual market size and opportunity, right? What's the unit economics? Like, if we invest tens of millions of dollars into that, what are we going to get to? And then what's the exit path? So it depends. And this is, I think, part of a good founder's job is you'll talk to a lot of investors. Part of the game is like understanding what they want and finding and teasing out, like, are they vision-based? Like, do they believe in where we're headed? Are they, financial-based? Are they just looking for like this very strict return because they maybe they're at the tail end of their fund and they're now just looking for like singles and doubles as opposed to home runs? Part of what we learned, or I learned through this process, is like you need to bucket your investors and understand the different archetypes.
Do you need a lawyer when you start?
Yes.
You said a little bit about NDA. People like ask right away NDA, but
You don't need a general counsel that's in-house. You definitely need an attorney, I think, yeah. There's a lot of things that you can figure out and do without an attorney, especially now with like Gen AI tools out there. I think it's appropriate to always have a human, at least at this stage. Obviously the legal tech world is changing really rapidly. I have a friend who started a company. We were in the same cohort at Techstars. They're a legal tech company. I don't think the tech's quite there yet where I would like fully trust a AI system to do attorney work, but they can get 90% of the way there, and then you can like outsource to an outside counsel or someone you keep on retainer.
got it. About AI, we spoke a little bit about it because your product include AI, right? What do you think? Which industry will be most disrupted by AI?
Everything. I think everything is going to get disrupted.
Is any industry already disrupted?
Oh yeah, I think tech is actually the first.
I saw the job offers for people who work in IT, coders. It was like rough like that, and after that, like.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just speak about our company. We use 3 different coding tools and agents, and it feels like we have the coding, like a staff of developers that's probably like 20 people is what it feels like, but in reality we have like 4.
Because of AI.
The speed at which we can now develop, and like, Roman, it's amazing. It's like, this is one of those things where I get like, every day I'm like just floored by what we're doing. We go from like a PR, like basically a request for a feature, to a production push in like 2 days.
Before?
I mean, to get to production, it used to be like, you would pat yourself on the back for a really complex thing, maybe like a couple weeks. And that's if you're like going at a blistering pace.
It's real.
It's amazing. And so now there's like early stage developers, young developers, are like, the job market, I think for them is really tough. Because now it's like these veteran coders or developers almost become like conductors to an orchestra of agents that are doing the work, and they're like supervising and just making sure everything kind of ties together harmoniously. Whereas the younger folks don't have that ability to see what's good and not, and like where the risks are. Like a good developer, our VP of engineering is awesome. And like we had a new feature which is like something big that we've been talking about for months. And we made the decision on Friday that we're going to start building it. Literally yesterday, we had a working, like it's already staged, so we're testing it and like interacting with it in our staged environment or development environment.
It's all these layoffs in Amazon, 100,000 people. They're not just covered by, like, they're not saying because of AI, it's for real because of AI. Productivity is much faster, and company lay off so many people because of AI. Because some people said it's not true, they just saying because of AI, but you think it's such a huge disrupt on the market?
Yeah, well, first of all, I haven't worked at Amazon for years, so I'm just going off of old information and what I've read, and what I hear from friends that are still there. I think there's a couple things at play. So first of all, macroeconomically, I think there's a lot of uncertainty happening in the world right now, like trade disruptions, tariffs, decoupling from China. I think the EU has some existential challenges that they need to sort out. So I think just businesses in general are maybe not investing in headcount. So like that's one thing. Obviously AI has the ability to disrupt a lot of things, but I think it's mostly with like white collar workers. And again, mostly I think focused to date on like developers and software, people in the software realm. I think the lesson I took from, I'm not trying to get political, but like when Elon bought Twitter and reduced the amount of employees at that company, and X still works, right? X is still functional. You could argue that, the safety issues, but, put that aside for a second, like the platform still runs. And they went from like 10,000 people to 2,000 people. I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's a huge reduction. So the point I'm trying to make is like, I also think there is a lot of like optimization to be made at these larger companies, right? One of the things that I think a lot of these, like this is like the end of the life cycle for companies, they get to this point where like these upper middle management type folks start building fiefdoms. And I saw this at Amazon, where people are like, if I have headcount, I have control, or if I have headcount, I have security, because now I have a team of 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people that I run. And my incentive isn't to optimize the most efficient team to do my job, it's to get the biggest org I can. And so I think a lot of that actually does happen at these companies. And so part of what I see when I hear these announcements that like, hey, there's a bunch of layoffs happening, I have to imagine a certain percentage of it is at least related to that, where like the executives at these companies realize there is a lot of optimizing you can do with the existing headcount to get the same results with a much lower, staffing or number of employees that you have. So I think it's a combination of all three of those. Amazon though, like they have high seasonality with their business, right? Like they're still, most of the employee base is involved in the retail part of the business, right? That means picking physical products, putting them in boxes and shipping them. So those layoffs, I don't know what percentage of those layoffs are related to the retail side and what's related to, the tech side or the AWS side.
If you look back 5 years ago, what do you tell yourself?
Just do it.
Just do it?
Just do it.
Nike.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of fear involved. And I think this is like, going back to your earlier question, you talked about like skill. Yeah, I think this it's a thing you can develop, but it's like courage. I think you need a lot of courage to actually take the risk. And that means just believing in yourself, having that faith. This is why I love your videos on YouTube.
Thank you.
Right? It's like, until you internalize that those motivational things that you hear and see all the time, until you believe that yourself internally, I think it's really hard to do a lot of these things. So like, you got to get up and look in the mirror and be like, all right, I'm that guy.
Sometimes my video even motivate myself.
Yeah,
what you can recommend for maybe some advice, young people watching our video?
I have a rant about this. I know we're in your like lightning round of questions, so I'm doing a bad job of answering these succinctly, but I think I think it's become fashionable to be pessimistic. It's become fashionable to think that things are always going to go wrong, and it's like, it's cool to be a nihilist, or it's cool to be like, oh man, that's not going to work, to be a doubter and a hater. And it's very unfashionable, I think, to be like, I'm hopeful. I think people interpret that as like naivete. I feel like it's just not a good way to live life. Like if you're constantly pessimistic about something, and it's self-reinforcing. So your question, my advice to the youngsters is like, and I don't know what age group you're thinking, but you got to believe. Like there's always doom and gloom. There's always people telling you something's not going to work. Your job is to figure out how it can work and believe it can work and go do it. And like, there's no other solution other than that. Like that is the first step. And if we were to solve any of our problems, and it could be related to, hey, I'm going to start a startup, or it's like, just look at the challenges we have globally right now. It's like a lot of uncertainty. There's, an energy crisis. There's climate change. I think we have immense challenges with healthcare in this country and globally. There's so many problems. If we give in to that pessimism, we're definitely not going to solve the problems. Like, I think our job is to remain hopeful and to be resilient and to be optimistic and just go try things and go take risks and go build it. And like, I don't think there's enough people talking about that. Like I think we're losing some of this like pure essence around like what it means to be human. Like we're incredibly powerful creatures. We can do a lot of things. We change the environment around us. We change the world. If we start to lose sight of that, I think we've lost something really important about what it is to be a human being.
What helps you to stay positive and move forward?
I'm blessed, I got relationships like this, people I can talk to. I at the end of the day, I feel like the only reason anything's worth doing is like who you're doing it with. I have an awesome crew, and that goes from my family to my friends to the people I get to work with. Like, I'm lucky. I'm surrounded by awesome people. I get to talk to them every day. I get to work with them every day. I get to bounce ideas off of them. They tell me I'm stupid, or they tell me it's a great idea, and we go, we work well together. So that's what I'm most grateful for. Yeah.
I wish you luck in this not easy environment, not easy startup world, but I love how you positive. Since school, I remember you was like so passionate about business. And another trip in Dubai was in this Toyota Land Cruiser, I think. Remember at night, and you said like, I quit my job, I will start a startup. I said, wow. Yeah, and congratulations with that. All the best. And next interview, when you be like, I don't know, sell your business to some huge company, or will acquire someone, will be huge move. We'll record another.
Yeah, we'll do a part
interview.
2 for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Roman.
Thank you.